morning, A3PL.
Blue, I love you, and Kendra too. Ken, you're my boo. A3PL, every day of my life, it's only Alpha. Hey everyone, it's your boy Max Adams, and welcome to episode 4 of the A3PL's podcast. Just the other day and today, in fact, I was paying attention to the forums and I realized, well, mostly the shoutbox, and I realized that people are losing faith in this lovely community. Threats of moving to a new community, all kind of stuff. And why is it like that? Is it the cops, management, Keynes and Asa, the demonetization by Bohemia? I don't know, but it's a big problem that needs to be sorted out, rectified now. If there's an issue, talk to an admin, somebody. I'm sure their customer service is on point. They're willing to hear you. And if it's in game, organize certain things with the cops. One of the reasons why I think that people are not, well, playing much or leaving the community or have intentions of leaving is because of the slow updates. I know it might not be the negligence of Kane, there are reasons why they're late, especially the issue with Bohemia, but that needs to be sped up because people are impatient. They want something to do. Right now, there are not many things to do. Most of the implementations are going to factions and not civilians, and we're getting pissed off because of that. So I think that should be addressed. It's kind of funny because I can do the world of crimes, shootouts, robbing, gun smuggling by an illegal arms dealer, but I mostly get arrested due to someone else doing a major crime and I watch as a standby, and I get detained and searched due to probable cause, and I just happen to have an illegal gun on me with no CCP. And with that being said, I just wanted to point out about last night where the cops stopped that shootout at Mexican Hill. That was kind of good on their part. I wasn't really a part of it because it started before me, but the cops managed to stop maybe the biggest hostage situation A3PL has ever seen, because I think there were 17, 18 cops and we had almost the same amount of people in that hostage situation. So good job to them. They stopped it before it started because it would have been chaos. Okay, so here we go. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm doing very well.
Yeah, how was your day?
It just got started, so I'll have to get back to you on that one. But I think it's going to be a good one.
Just got started. It's about to finish.
Not where I'm from. I'm on the Pacific Coast.
Really? What time
Yeah,
is
I've
it?
been. Right now it is just 13 minutes after noon.
Ugh. I see. Okay. Right, so we have Jason Kallam, is it?
That's correct. Yes.
Yes, well, people might not know you. Well, I know you. Who is Jason fucking Kallam? Explain yourself.
Okay. Well, I am the now captain of Fisher Island Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
I, in that role, have been recently promoted as there's been some command changes in the department. I work directly under and with Sheriff Rockford Steele. Basically, we lean on each other for any decisions that change, the course or direction or operating procedures for the department, as we've made several big changes already, which have done a really good job of boosting morale. So we're very happy about that. As far as off of the island, I've been in law enforcement for 14 years. Very much enjoyed it. Prior to that, I was a medic in the military, and got to see a couple tours over in the Middle East doing that. But yeah, as far as who I am, I'm just a guy that enjoys video games. I enjoy shooting. I enjoy helping people out, and being outdoors with my dog. So that's pretty much Jason Kallam in a nutshell.
You must have an amazing dog.
I have a German Shepherd, and yes, she is quite the amazing pooch. She's of course law enforcement trained, and I enjoy every moment that I have with her. She's a great partner.
So you have military background, law enforcement background. It's crazy.
I do. I think it blends well into my role here, as it allows me, the knowledge that is needed to really bring the department to that next realism standard.
Yeah, and it's quite unfortunate that Rockford couldn't be here. It would have been awesome to have both of you guys, exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a great guy. He's been working in the corrections industry, well, as a corrections officer for quite some time. So he also brings a lot of experience and knowledge to the table. We're both a little bit older than most of the people around too.
Yes, yeah, that is true. Yeah, that comes with experience, of course. So
exactly.
Yeah, Mr. Kallam. So, what are your roles and functions as a captain?
So, my role as a captain, basically, I oversee all of the operations and training that go on in the department. So, essentially, I'm the right hand man for Sheriff Steele. So, where he does more of the administrative section of the department, making sure that SOPs are good and making sure that any new policies in place are going to work for the department, stuff like that, which is of course a very important job. I'm the one that actually passes that down to the ranks lower than me, the lieutenants and the sergeants and so on, and I ensure that the lieutenants and the other command staff are getting those new policies and making sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, making sure that that's all trickling down to even as low as the cadets, the new officers that we've hired. Additionally, I also update and maintain what we call the patrol bulletin board, which is a board that we use, which public is allowed to see because we believe in transparency. But it basically gives any new information to officers that are coming on duty. They can take a look at that every day, see if we have any, new policies or changes to policies that they need to be aware of, any current or active situations that are, big enough that we put it on the bulletin board, as well as any new, exciting information. For example, right now, if you look on the bulletin board, I've recently designed a new livery, a graphic scheme for our vehicles, and that has been posted up there. So the officers can get on there and see what their cars are going to actually look like as soon as we can get those taken care of and ordered. So yeah, it's kind of a multi-point role. I enjoy it very much. It's where I feel that I can do my best work. And ultimately, if anybody has questions that go through the chain of command, I'm where those questions stop. With the exception of the sheriff, I'll share anything that people bring to me. So yeah, that's kind of the role.
Yeah, okay. And this board that you talk about, how could you access it as a civilian?
So it's when you go on to the Fishers Island government website, you can go to the Sheriff's Department section of that, and under General Information, there is links to it where people can go and see it. The board itself, like I said, is open to public view. Some of the links that are attached to the board for SOPs, for different divisions and stuff like that, those require you to be in the department, but the board itself, anybody can take a look at.
Okay, and I think you should encourage people to actually look at topics that the sheriff or even the EMS fire post, because me for one would just look at the first quarter of the board on the website and not pay attention to the bottom because it's for factions and it has nothing to do with me. So I guess you should encourage people to actually view those other areas, the topics. They might learn something.
Absolutely. And like I said, we strive for transparency with the community. Um, you know, we want people to know that we take their comments and complaints and suggestions seriously. And in doing so, we, pass that down to the guys in the department, the officers, and make sure that they understand that, this is where this is coming from. And so having the public be able to see that we're actively doing those things is very important to us. So, we're not going to obviously give out information that's going to assist criminals in, knowing what we're going to do and how we're going to respond to them. But what we will give out is any information that shows that the department is there to serve the public as a community-oriented department, and the board is just one of those ways. But we post in that forum quite a bit in that topic, general topic, and there's lots of information there for the public to read.
Yeah, that's very intuitive. And I'm guessing you. I never saw you in when it was Alpha, A3PL. That's one thing I wanted to get at. You never played Alpha.
I didn't know. I came here probably a couple months before beta released.
Okay.
I was with a different community prior to that as a chief of police in that community, so I was running the law enforcement there.
Oh, it's not your first rodeo.
No, definitely not my first rodeo. And that was a good community. It didn't pan out the way that we had hoped, and so I ended up. I'm sure you all know Troy, who's over here. I've known him for quite a long time now, and we were in that community together. And so one day he messaged me out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey, you really need to come over here." And so I came and checked it out and talked to some people, and yeah, I was all in at that point.
Okay. So obviously you're a cop, well, sheriff, police. And how do you see the civilian community on A3PL?
Well, it's like anywhere else. Most of the civilians, most of the public, they just want to be able to make money and run a business or set up a business or mine or go out for a boat ride or whatever they want to do. They want to do it without being harassed, and nobody can blame them there. And for the most part, all of them do. They're maybe sure they might break a traffic infraction here or there, but we really don't. It will stop you, but we're really not going to throw the book at you on that. We're just going to give you a warning and say, hey, probably not the best idea to be driving that. Of course, then you've got a couple of criminals within the community who would love to see all that disrupted and cause as much chaos as they can. And those are the people that we're really after. So, yeah. All in all, the community is fantastic. Enjoy coming, driving out on the roads every day, going through downtown and talking to people. It's an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I could imagine. So how do you see the police that your subordinates or your supervisors, how do you see the sheriff department on a whole?
I think the sheriff's department is an outstanding department. There was some changes that needed to be made, and the sheriff prior to Sheriff Steele did a very good job in a lot of aspects, and the captain prior to me did a very good job in a lot of aspects, and I will never. But there was a few things that the deputies wanted to see done, and once the command was changed, we were able to get those things done pretty much immediately, and so the guys are extremely happy, and they do a very good job. I think they're probably some of the best trained department deputies or officers on any island that I've been on. And they strive for excellence. There's been a few issues here and there, of course. There's always going to be, but for the most part, it's been a pleasure to work with them. It's been a pleasure to see them grow and learn, and I look forward to every day coming on and seeing, just how well they are doing and how they're received by the public.
Sounds like well experienced people. But I see that you alluded to giving people warnings and so forth. But how do you balance warning someone and giving them a ticket in terms of speed in traffic? How do you balance that?
Well, just like anywhere else, that always comes down to officer discretion. Now, we do have a database in every single patrol vehicle, and that goes by both the individual's driver's license, their name on their driver's license, and the license plate on their vehicle. And so, on a traffic stop, officer is going to speak to the driver and get their information from them, and then they're going to go back to their vehicle after they've explained why the person was pulled over, and they're going to pull up that database and look at the driver's name according to the driver's license as well as the license plate number. And if that driver has several previous infractions, then that driver's most likely not going to get a warning, because
Clearly.
they're not learning their lesson. Now, if they don't have any infractions prior, but it was a pretty serious infraction that they committed when they've been pulled over in the present, then that officer most likely is going to give them a citation simply because it's a behavior that needs to change, and so a citation is much more likely to change that behavior than just warning them and saying, "Hey, don't do that again." If it hurts them in the pocketbook a little bit, they're more likely to change. So, like I said, it's officer discretion, but we do kind of have some standards that we expect from the officers in that regard.
Okay, so it's discussion basically.
Exactly.
Okay, the reason why I brought that up is because I have experience with officers because I could remember a time I was driving down the MSR and I was doing a 77 in a 30 and I got a warning for that. And another time I did 40 in a 30 and I got a ticket. And that is way less speed. So I just want to know how you balance things like that.
My guess would probably be that when you got the warning for 77 and a 30, and I will throw in there, be glad it wasn't me because 77 will get you a ticket from me. But what I'm guessing is that the officer who pulled you over in that instance wrote or marked down in the database that you'd been warned for speed. And so that showed up the second time you got pulled over, and the officer saw that. And despite the fact that it was a lot lower of a speed, you had already been warned once, and he felt that that one warning was sufficient, and this time he should cite you. So that would be my assumption based on how I would do it.
Well, I mean, just 10 over is not that bad. I mean,
I agree, and I wouldn't have cited you, but again, it is officer discretion, and some officers would ticket their own mother, whereas I'm a lot more lenient.
I see. But there's one thing I want to know other than that. Have you heard any word of police brutality amongst civilians or abuse, misconduct, people getting illegal search? Any corruption within the sheriff department that had been reported to you?
I've gotten some reports, and I always do my due diligence to follow up very, very closely on those reports. I'm happy to say that out of all the reports that I have gotten, only a couple of them were actually true, and those officers have been fired. They're no longer with the sheriff's department because we don't tolerate that whatsoever.
Justice.
It's yeah, absolutely. It's not the message that we want to send to the public that we allow that. So we have fired some officers for that. It wasn't a strike system or anything like that. It was just straight to that officer's terminated. They're no longer with us. For the most part, though, a lot of the reports that I get turn out to be either falsified reports or blown way out of proportion, simply because the civilian making the report does not understand law enforcement and how it works. So, but yeah, like I said, I am glad to report that 99% of them were not justified reports, whereas the ones that were, it's unfortunate they happened, but we did immediately terminate the officers that were involved in anything like that.
Nice. I feel a lot safer now.
Yeah,
Really good.
absolutely. Like I said, it's our goal to ensure that the public feels safe when they deal with us, that they trust us, and they want to work with us.
All right. And this thing that puzzles me when I pay attention to the government website is this controversy about criminal activity and excessive crime. I want to know how would you balance. I know that A3PL would have criminals doing their thing, they're bad guys, but if they do too much crime, they get basically warned for excessive crime, which could, be suspension or whatever. How do criminals play that out? Are they not supposed to do crime or?
Well, that seems to be the golden question lately, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, and again, this is a pretty controversial subject, like you said. My thoughts on it are this: obviously, there's always going to be crime. If there wasn't crime, then a sheriff's department wouldn't need to exist. And so, it's not that we're trying to completely eliminate crime off the island. To do so would be pointless. The excessive crime rule kind of falls into the if a person's getting if somebody's getting online every single day and all they do when they get onto the island when they wake up is they come on and they get a gun and they start driving around and either trying to take people hostage or kidnap them or shoot them or whatever, that's always going to lead to them being into a chase and a shootout with the sheriff's department. There's no other place that's going to lead. And it's like I was explaining or trying to explain to somebody the other day. Criminals think that they're being, creative and that they're using good creativity and imagination when
Role play
they do
strategy.
something right. Role play strategy. They think they're doing that when they do something different at the start of every situation that they put themselves in. But the fact is if they're doing something differently at the start, but then the end ends up the same way every single time, and that's a chase or a shootout, then there's no creativity in that, and that's going to be where it gets into that excessive crime area. Because think about it this way: if you had 10 movies that you were going to watch 10 nights in a row, and all 10 of those movies started out with a different hour in the beginning, and different things happened, different plot twists, etc. And in the last hour of the 2-hour movies, it's always the same thing. It's going to get pretty boring pretty quick, and you're not going to want to watch those movies, all of them.
True.
You're never going to get through all 10 of them because you're going to be like, nope, not going to do this. I know how they end. Well, that's kind of how I view the excessive crime rule. If you're always doing the same thing, or if you're always getting to the same result in the end, and you're always having a shootout with the sheriff's department, then you're doing it wrong. There needs to be more imagination and creativity there. The other thing you need to realize is that, if you come on the island for, let's say, 3 hours, and during that 3 hours, once a day, you go and you do crime that ends in a shootout or ends in, a big situation. Well, sure, you only were on there for 3 hours, and your one shootout is done. You're either under arrest, you're dead and starting over again, or you get away and you have to go resupply. And that's fine and dandy because you can get away from the situation. Us as officers, we don't get that luxury. We have to deal with you, and then once that's done, we have more calls from more civilians coming in that we have to go deal with, which leaves us strained on supplies. It leaves us tired, and it leaves us, basically going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing constantly. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, it also affects the people on the island because while we're dealing with, Joe Criminal who's shooting up the place, which does take, 99% of our resources and officers, somebody else might be getting, a guy coming at him with a pickaxe. And so we can't respond to that very effectively because we're already tied up in, a hostage situation or a shootout at Mexican Hill or whatever the case may be. And so the rest of the island suffers from it. So it's not that we don't want crime, and it's not that we don't want shootouts. What it is that we want to have people understand that if that's all you do when you're coming on, then you're taking RP experiences away from everybody else on the island and basically making it all about you. And that's self-centered and, selfish action. And that's going to end up being the problem.
And I could actually see that as a problem because if not only with the cops, with civilians, if you're always robbing civilians every time, that's gonna ruin the experience in A3PL on the server, and they might even leave.
Right, exactly. And people don't like the whole idea of the quote unquote, do this or I'll shoot you. Okay, well, if you go up to just some regular person who's trying to mine, by steel mill and make money so that he can buy the car that he wants, and you take him away from his mining because you say, okay, I'm pointing a gun at you, get in the car, I'm taking you as a hostage. Yeah, sure, that might be fun once or twice, but if it happens on a regular basis, you're going to lose that person. They're not going to want to do it anymore because they can't
Yeah.
get done their goals. And so, like I said, that kind of crime is very selfish, and it is okay once in a while. But what the criminals on the island who want to be criminals, what they really need to do is they really need to use their imaginations and think about how it works in reality. Criminals don't want the attention of police officers. Hostage situations in reality, they happen because of a person being extremely desperate and thinking they have
Yeah.
no other things that they can do, or they are, basically crazy and they pull off a plan that has no way of winning. If you look at
True.
reality,
Suicide.
there's no winning hostage situations in the United States. They just doesn't happen. Everybody's either arrested or killed, and that's how it ends up. And so, doing so on the island, taking a hostage on the island, they need to expect the same result. It's not going to be any different. We're not going to, you know, I think the one thing that criminals get upset about is they expect us to pay a lot of money and then just let them go in exchange. Well, that's
Free
just not going to
pass.
happen. Yeah, that's never ever going to happen. We have to think about, and they blame us for not caring about the lives of the hostages, which that's, they're the ones that put the hostage in that situation. It's not us that didn't care about their life. Whatever happens to that hostage, that's on the criminal. That's on the person that put that guy in the situation in the first place. But we're never going to let a guy just walk out the door and go. It's not going to happen. We can't, because we have to take the public's greater good over the one or two or three or four hostages. Yes, it's
Uh,
sad and the hostages might die, but we can't let the rest of the island be at risk of a dangerous person just to keep the lives of a few. We'll always try to do our best to get the hostages out. You guarantee that. But if we can't, we can't. And that's on the criminal.
and I see that's how the admin discretion came in to do the excessive crime that rule there.
Right. And
Okay.
and for some reason people see that as, well, you can't do any crime. Well, that's not true at all. We do want things to do. We just don't want to be in a shootout every 20 minutes.
That must be very strenuous.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that sounds pretty awesome. I mean, you guys do a lot. It seems pretty cool. But what if someone walks up to you and is like, how do you join the sheriff department? What's the procedure like? What they have to do? What the background must be like? How does it work joining the SD?
It's funny you ask me that. I actually just finished opening up the new application process last night. So I'll explain that a little bit. So basically,
Yep.
when somebody wants to join the department, they're required to have been on Fisher's Island for a period of 2 weeks. They're required to have been crime free for 2 weeks. So if they just got here 2 weeks ago, they can't have committed any crimes, or felony crimes rather. Misdemeanors we don't count against them, and traffic infractions we don't count against them. If they meet that qualification, they have to be 17 years of age in reality, and that's so that we get mature officers. We don't want 13-year-old officers that might not be mature and might cause problems. And then once they've read those requirements and they are posted in the application process, then they put in a simple interest application, and that shows us that they're interested in becoming a deputy with the department. It's not very long. It's quite short. I think the longest section on it is only 120 words, because we're not looking for a book. We're just looking for somebody saying, yes, I want to do this and this is why. And then on that same application form, there's a link to what we call a Fisher's Island Sheriff's Department pre-post test. POST stands for Peace Officer Standards Training. And what that test is it's a basic knowledge test that anybody who's in high school or graduated high school should be able to do fairly well at. Um, Once they take that test, their score is used to put them on an eligibility list. Now, the eligibility list is where we're going to pull from when we need new deputies. So the higher they score on the test, the higher they get on the eligibility list. And there are a few ways to get extra points as well. If somebody's real world law enforcement or military or previous, and we can verify that, they'll get 5 additional points added to their score. If they've been in any of Fisher's Island emergency services, they'll get 3 points added to their score. And if they are DOC currently, if they work for the Department of Corrections on the island, they get 4 points added to their score. And all that's laid out. But once they get their score, like I said, we'll add any additional points if needed, and then they're placed on the eligibility list. And when we need new deputies, we'll go through and we'll take however many, like let's say we want to hire 3, we'll take 1, 2, and 3 on the eligibility list and we'll interview them. And if they interview well and we end up hiring them, then those 3 are taken off the list, and number 4 and below move up to number 1. And so that way we're not doing 100 interviews in a day when we open up applications. Instead, we have a constant list of people that are ready to get into the department that we're ready to hire if they pass through the interview process.
Makes a lot of sense.
And it's done the same way in real world agencies, and so it's a really good way to do it because, like I said, we don't get exhausted as command trying to interview 100 people every time we open up applications, and we always have a running basically best candidate list because, the better you do on the test, then probably the better you'll do in training. It kind of correlates.
More than likely. Okay, that's pretty cool, pretty awesome. And I see that the SD also has gun permits. How does that work?
So that's actually through the Department of Justice. We enforce it, of course, because that's our job as officers, is enforce the law. But so what the people need to do if they're interested in getting a concealed carry permit is they go to the Department of Justice and they do an application process for it. And of course they have to do a background check. They have to do a competency test, which they do with us, and then they do a psychological eval, which they do with EMS. So once they've got all 3 of those things done, then they have a hearing to determine whether they're competent and safe, gun owner and gun user, and then they can carry on the island as a concealed carry holder. And of course, concealed means it has to be concealed at all times, and it can only be used in self-defense. And that's where the competency course comes in, is not only do we make sure that they understand how to use the firearm and how to shoot safely, but we also overview all the laws related to, concealed carry, such as, what is the definition of self-defense, and, the 3 factors, ability, opportunity, and intent, that they have to prove in court to say that they indeed were, using self-defense. And they do that with any of our sergeants or higher ranks. And we're setting up a system within the department to where we can ensure that those are done quickly and efficiently, and being done the same way every time.
Okay, but would you encourage people to get gun permits?
Absolutely. I'm a major proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe fully that people should have the ability to protect themselves when they need to lawfully, and that they should have the peace of mind that, they have something to protect themselves with against the criminals on the island. So yeah, as long as they're following the laws and doing it for the right reasons, I absolutely believe that somebody should have the ability to carry a firearm.
Okay, that's pretty intuitive. That was well done, well said. Amazing.
Thank you.
So one thing I want to know is, A3PL on the whole, what do you think of the direction, the future it's going? What do you think of that? I hear a lot of people saying that it's dying, not many people are playing now, possibly to slow updates or not many things to do. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, like I alluded to earlier, I'm a little older than most people here. I'm 38, so I grew up in a different generation than the majority of the people on the island, and I'm not, and I hate to say this because I don't want it to sound bad, but I'm not as entitled as most people are here. So for me, I don't care if an update is delayed. I know it's delayed for a good reason. I'm not impatient about that. And, I'm not going to cry wolf the second that something occurs with, for example, Bohemia Interactive taking away
Yeah.
monetization for whatever their reason was.
Yeah, that was a
That's going to
clusterfuck.
get, yeah, well, but it's going to get sorted out. And I know that. And even if
Hopefully.
it doesn't, there's always going to be a plan B. And so, to me, I see the future of A3PL as fantastic. It's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to be exciting. When people aren't sick, the updates will come on a regular basis. I think the one thing they do need to do is stop putting a date on the update and then just instead say this is the next
Yeah.
update, and we'll let you know when it launches.
That could be an issue.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I think there's a little entitlement problem that people feel like they're owed something all the time. And so if they see a date on there, they feel like they're owed that update on that date, or, all hell breaks loose. And so I think that's one way to avoid that. But people are fickle. Young guys especially, they're fickle, and there's always going to be the next great thing, and the hype train is always going to keep rolling, and I don't buy into that stuff, because all it does is, it gets people talking, and most of the time they have no clue what they're talking about. And so listening to that kind of stuff or buying into it, it's just, it's going to set you up for disappointment or disaster. And so, like I said, this is the best community I've been a part of. It's the best island I've ever been on, best sheriff's department or law enforcement faction that I've ever been a part of. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So, whether or not people want to say the sky is falling, I'm not going to look up and, see nothing falling, because it's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah, you seem so chill. Good stuff. Well, I think that's actually it for the podcast interview. Thanks for being on the program.
Of course, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
Yeah, good to have you in the future.
Anytime you want, just send me an invite.
Okay, that'll be it for now. Later.
All right, thanks, Max.
Yeah, cheers. I'm cruising down MSR, going to Taco Bell's bar. I spotted you from afar, and now you're in my way. I have a gun in the car, screaming on Whistler, driving real hard, but now you're in my way. You pulled me over, I looked over my shoulder, now you're walking closer. Where do you think you're going, deputy? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. Well, here's my ID. Please don't jail me. I'm sorry, officer, when you tase me, but here's my ID. Please don't jail me. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. Well, here's my ID. Please don't jail me. And all the other cops try to chase me, but here's my ID. Please don't jail me. I'm fishing on the shore, money I'm trying to make more. All I heard was 10-4, and now you're in my way. I got scared so I ran, you followed me in your Mustang. My car was blocked by your gang, and now you're in my way. You pulled me over, I looked over my shoulder, now you're walking closer. Where do you think you're going, deputy? Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. Well, here's my ID. Please don't jail me. I'm sorry, officer, when you tase me, but here's my ID. Please don't jail me. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. Well, here's my ID. Please don't jail me. And all the other cops try to chase me, but here's my ID. Please don't jail me. When there are no sheriffs on duty, I am so glad. I am so glad. I am so glad. When there are no sheriffs on duty, I am so glad. And you know that I am so glad. I'm sorry, officer, when you tase me, but here's my ID. Please don't jail me. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. Well, here's my ID. Please don't jail me. I'm sorry, officer, when you tase me, but here's my ID. Please don't jail me. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. Well, here's my ID. Please don't jail me. And all the other cops try to chase me, but here's my ID. Please don't jail me.